Well, hello YouTube. Mad Eddie's Man Style Monster Machine Shop here, and this is the second chapter in my series of videos. I'm going to start this video with an overview of my welding table. So, as I mentioned in chapter 1, I got into metalworking, fabricating, machining, starting with welding. That was the first thing I did. So I watched Ron Covell videos, bought his DVDs, learned about Jody Collier welding tips and tricks on YouTube and watched his videos, talked to some friends of mine at work to get some insight on safety tips and procedures, and asked them what was the most difficult welding process to learn, and they said it was AC welding of aluminum. So that's what I started with, and I gotta admit, having done that, from there everything else became relatively easy. So when I started welding, I had a cheap little table from a local shop, and then eventually ended up getting this table, which I'm going to cover. I've had this about a year now, and I want to show some of the things that I use on my welding bench to facilitate my type of machining. So I've had this about a year. I actually bought it from Brian Stevens of Oak Fabrication, and it's a custom table. He makes everything from scratch, assembles it all himself, has it sent out for drilling of the holes on the top, and then will actually paint it in whatever color you want. So because I started off with a Miller welder, I tend to stick with Miller welding colors, so you'll see a lot of black and blue throughout my machine shop. I'm going to take the camera off the stand here so I can walk you through the table. So one of the key features I like about this is that it's got these square tubes underneath the table to which you can affix, and you can see there's locking screws here, and there's actually one on the inside as well. There's 2 locking screws per end so that you can affix accessories to the end of the table. And that brings me to some of the things that I've attached to this table. Now the configuration has changed from the time I've originally bought it to its final configuration now, and that's only because some of the projects you work on will to a large extent dictate what type of equipment you need on it. This end generally tends to stay the same. As you can see, I have a ball door grinder, single phase with some precision wheels, and I use this for grinding my tungstens. So because I started off with welding, when I'm grinding here and need to sharpen my pencil, I just flip over to this and give it a touch up, and then I'm back at it. I've got a really nice jet general purpose grinder here on this end, and then over here comes to what is actually the first piece of equipment attached to this, which is a Kalamazoo 1-inch grinder. I'm sorry, 1-inch belt sander. Kalamazoo 1-inch belt sander with a ball door motor. I bought this used on Craigslist, and it was actually one of the dirtiest pieces of equipment I've ever seen. This thing was filthy, rusted, had bugs, cobwebs, leaves, junk, mud, everything you can imagine, all inside of this tiny little machine. It took me days just to clean this, but I did, and as you can see, I gave it the Miller black and blue paint job, and it's turned out really nice. I use it a lot, and as you can see, I also affixed a diamond aluminum dust plate to help keep some of the dust down, and very convenient, very robust, very powerful, suits my needs and purposes very well. The next thing I acquired was this bandsaw used at an auction, and now it came on a stand, and the stand took up a large footprint in my workshop, which is a garage, so I couldn't live with all the space it was taking up, and decided to cut the base off and mount it onto my welding bench. So you can see I did so by using an extender here. Now when I originally had this mounted, I had it flipped the other way so that the work fed in this way, which was not convenient. So by building out those extension arms and mounting it the other way, It gave me a lot more flexibility and made it a lot easier to work with. I use it for really quick cutting jobs while I tend to be working, and it's worked out wonderfully. So I really like the bench. As you can see, it's got a lot of capability. I have dust shields on. They're just sitting there, and I can take them off if I need more additional room. They're just pieces of plexiglass which help keep the dust down. When I'm working, I generally pull it out of the garage and then determine the size of the equipment I need or workpiece that I need to work on, and that determines whether I leave the plexiglass shields in place or take them off, or even take the equipment off on the ends if I need to work on something really large. Some of my projects have been pretty big. For example, this fire pit arbor is pretty big, so I needed the full use of my bench and plus some workhorses to be able to hold a workpiece. But there are my table clamps. As you can see, the bench is pretty heavy. I'd say it's about 350 pounds when you get it as configured with all the machines on it. It's probably closer to 500, 550, something like that. I've got a lot of just stuff clamps down here, aluminum squares, gosh, you name it. Even got a hand drill down there just in case, because I tend to drill a lot of holes, and obviously a power strip. And this thing is really robust. It's worked out very well, and I'm very pleased with it. So again, big thanks to Brian Stevens of Oak Fabrication. In the next video, I'm going to cover my grinders, so specifically Baldor, and I'll share a little story about that. So thanks for your time. More to come. Talk to you next time.